Welcome to the third episode of the Blacklist Sessions, where we discuss a heap of different topics, music, business and film, and anything else that comes up. And I'm really excited about the guests that we have today. We have Daniel Tolson. How are you?
Mate, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me here.
Excellent. So I think the best place to start would probably be to get a little bit of background into what you do, because you're quite a successful bloke and you do a lot of great things. So I guess, let's tell the listeners a little bit about what you get up to.
Well, I definitely didn't start with any unfair advantages. I went through school, and by the time I got to first and second grade, I realised that I was just dropping behind everybody else. I was sitting in the classroom and I'd look at the teacher writing on the board, and I couldn't make sense of anything on the board. And then I'd start to write down words into the paper. But what was on the board and what was on the paper were two totally different things. And then I'd read out what was on my paper, and all the kids would laugh. And so I knew that there was something wrong with me, but people hadn't picked it up. So from about third grade, I started to go into remedial therapy. And I'd sit in this special room, and they'd hang a tennis ball from the roof down here, and they'd swing it around the room. And I had to watch it with my eyes going around the room. That was one remedial therapy. Another remedial therapy, I had to draw this figure 8, and I had no idea why I'm drawing this figure 8, but it was to realign the hemispheres of the brain. So my left and right brain weren't communicating correctly. So throughout school, I just struggled. I was always kicked out of class. And then by the time I got into high school, I said, this is enough. And I ended up getting Epstein-Barr virus and chronic fatigue. So I dropped out of school, no high school education, and never went back.
Wow.
So there's no unfair advantages there. But I have learned over the years, especially once I got to age 28, I realised that my life was going to get no better. And I had to learn how to learn again. So I signed up for university, and I lasted one semester. I couldn't get past the examinations, and I dropped out. Yep. And I took a job controlling traffic, and I held a stop slow sign on the side of the street controlling traffic. And then I knew I was in big trouble.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, university, hey? I don't think it really is the be-all and end-all that it really used to be, because it's pretty clear that there's so many routes that you can take to get success these days. So I guess, so from there you worked out, man, I've got to do something. So
I'm in trouble.
what was the next step after that?
Well, I had a girlfriend at the time, just before that, and she was cabin crew with Emirates Airline. And I looked at her job and I said to myself, that's what I could do. I could hop on that aircraft, travel the world, explore, and learn about myself. So I moved back to Dubai and got a job with Emirates Airline, and I worked my way through the ranks until I co-led a team of 17,000 cabin crew. And that's when my life really started to turn around, from 2008 onwards.
Yeah, so what is it that you think you learnt the most during that transition period when you were working in the cabin crew? What was it that really gave you the skills to create that shift in your life?
Well, the first thing was when I was in the training college. So it was September 2008, and I kept failing my exams. And I was studying hard, but I was failing. And what had happened with Emirates Airline was you needed to get an 80% pass mark to get your license. But I would get 79, and then I'd have to reset, and then the pass mark would go up to 85. And then I'd redo the exam, and then I'd get 90 points. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with me? And so I'd have to go back and I'd explain this story. I had learning disabilities. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Then I realised I was just telling myself bullshit stories. I was making up all these reasons why I couldn't have success and other people could. And that's when I realised that I had to get my shit together.
Yep. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, that's great. So what was the next step after that? So you realized that you really need to get it all together, and then did you start your own business from there, or?
Well, in 2008, I realized that I had to learn how to learn.
Yep.
And I quickly learned that actually at school there wasn't anything wrong with me. The problem was that the teachers, the way that they were taught, they only had one way to teach. I always thought I had a learning disability, but I figured out that the teachers had teaching disabilities and they just couldn't teach me the way I needed to. So I'd learned neuroscience, I'd learned about emotional intelligence, I'd learned about cognitive behavioural therapy, and I figured out how to learn. And since 2008, I've read more than 1,000 books. I've written 17 of my own. I've created hundreds of videos, and I just love to learn. because I figured out how I learn. So that really started to change everything. And I realized that I couldn't get any further in life with the knowledge that I had.
Yep.
So I had to learn how to learn. And that's when I was becoming very successful in my professional career.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit I had great success in business before and in sports, I'd never had it in a career.
Yep.
So I got excited. I set goals. I got clear on where I wanted to go. And then again, it all fell in a heap.
Yeah. Sometimes it certainly does. But yeah, I think you're right because I've got a Bachelor of Education from uni, and it's so true. Like you see so many teachers that are trying to teach a certain way. These kids aren't learning, and I would hear it from kids all the time. They're just like, no, I just can't get it. So I think having that ability as a teacher to be able to, explain it like 7 different ways was something that I knew was really helpful for myself. Like when I was teaching kids and stuff like that. And I guess it's probably a really helpful skill, like even within sales too, to be able to explain something in a different way and portray something in a different light.
I learned guitar when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I was classically trained, and my mother used to send me for singing lessons because she wanted me to be a boy soprano.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting in trouble all the time. And I'd come home and I'd play these songs like Danny Boy and all these other ones, and I'd keep making the same mistake. And Mum would get really frustrated. And one day she went and smashed the guitar because I just kept making the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But what had happened was I had learned a mistake and nobody corrected me. So I successfully continued to make the mistake until everybody else got really upset. So we have to learn differently. I'm somebody that if you show me how to do it, I'll learn straight away. But if you're telling me about it, I'll never learn it. So education has to change. And I went and learned Chinese because I live in Taiwan. And I thought I better speak the language. And I said to my teacher, could you please take me down the street, show me how to order food, show me how to catch a taxi? And she said, oh, we don't do that. And I said, well, that's how I learn. If you can't show me how to do this, I'll never learn it. And so I stayed there for a full semester and I didn't learn anything. I've learned more from my 6-year-old daughter and my 2-year-old son. Yeah,
that's it. Tactile, I find for myself is a really good way of learning things. But it's so true, like the guitar thing, like, because it really is all neural programming, to be honest. Whenever I've had guitar students in the past and we'll be sitting down and we'll be playing scales, it's never about the speed. It's about the muscle memory and just getting that absolutely perfect. And then the byproduct is speed. You'll get faster over time and can play whatever you like, but it's just getting those pathways in the brain that are, I guess what you're really looking to get, looking for success. So yeah, that's really good. So after that, let's go forward into the future now. So now you're in a great company that you've started. Did you want to tell everyone a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. My wife had an accident on board an aircraft in about 2010, and she fell over and she fractured her knee in 5 places.
Wow.
So she was in and out of surgery for 2.5 years, and then as it was coming towards the end of the surgeries, she fell pregnant. And once she fell pregnant, she lost a job, and we're living in Dubai. So I had used up all of my holidays, and I wasn't going to be able to see my daughter for her birth. So the company said to me, Daniel, you've run out of holidays. You're going to have to resign and then reapply for your job.
Wow.
Or you can run the risk of missing out on the birth of your daughter. So I left a career that I'd just become very successful in to start again. And when I started my business, I just didn't know enough about business. And all of the money that I'd saved in Australia after I sold a house sat in my bank account, and I spent it all on trying to build my business in the first year. And by the end of 2013, I couldn't afford to live in Taiwan anymore. And I flew back into Australia. And the reason why I came back to Australia was to go on Centrelink. Because I'd spent all of my money. And what I'd learned afterwards that the reason why 80% of businesses fail in the first year is because of management incompetence. They don't know enough. And I was one of those people. So out of necessity, I said to myself, I have to learn how to run a business. I have to learn how to sell really well. I have to learn how to sell an intangible versus a tangible. So I started my own business. And it was out of the necessity of learning how to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that I've noticed a lot. There's a lot of familiar threads that I see. And one of those things is there always seems to be like a pinch point, like a crunch point where there's something that's really important that forces people to make those decisions that really change their life. So yeah, that's the first thing. So, I guess going from there, once you started your business, what were some of the challenges that you think you faced in the beginning?
Failure, failure, and more failure.
Yep.
I realized that I was in love with my product more than anybody else.
Yep.
And I couldn't communicate what I did. So it was by luck that one of my aunties said, I get what you do and I want what you're having.
Yep.
And so I worked with her. And my other cousin said, my mum's feeling good, come and work with me.
Yep.
And what happened was over this period of time, he took his business from earning $45 million a year to $90 million a year.
That's pretty big numbers.
And he said, you've got something good going on, but you've got to explain it better. So I remember it was the start of 2014 and I went and knocked on doors. And I went from real estate office to real estate office. And I said, my name is Daniel and I'm from Real Estate Agent Rescue. And they'd look at me and they'd go, real estate agent what? I'd say real estate agent rescue. And what I didn't realize was that by calling it real estate agent rescue, it presupposed that somebody wasn't successful.
Yep.
And automatically they said, we don't want it.
Yeah, they get the defense up.
Very defensive. So I thought, what do I do? What's the problem here? The problem is people are underperforming. If they're underperforming, they're not making sales, they're not making money. So I refined my message. And I went and I changed my target. So I started to ask the principal of the real estate offices the very obvious question, Jay, do you have anybody in here who's underperforming?
And then they instantly go, yeah.
They look at them and they say, yes. I'd say, what if they could double their sales results in the next 90 days? Guaranteed. And I'd say, then I'd talk to you. I'd say, have you got 2 minutes of my time? And then I just showed them how I could help them perform better and make more money. And that's all the business owner cares about. How do I make or save money? How do I make or save time? So I tapped into what's important in business, which is time and money.
Yes.
And then in my first 100 days, I made $100,000. And 4 years, what is it, maybe more, 5 years later, I'm still getting referrals and ongoing business from that.
That's fantastic.
So you target the right person. You got to make sure that they want and can understand what you're selling. If you can't do that, you'll never succeed.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah, I guess the way my business kind of started, it's a very similar thing: time and money and a problem. You know, because a lot of folks within the country music industry, because the margins on music, especially as you're starting, can be quite low. So a lot of these folks were really struggling to have the money for videos, and the video market was very, very expensive. And got to a point with myself where I was like, I just can't afford to keep dropping all this cash on these videos and not seeing the return. So same thing, like I spent some time learning and just teaching myself how to handle all the video equipment and starting to get good at that, and then got it to a point where I was like, okay, well, I can do mine. I'm going to solve my problem, and hopefully that will solve everyone else's problem too. And it just took off within a couple of years, and it just really seemed to hit the nail. And I think you know when you get it right.
Well, people look at you and they say, what are you smoking? Give me some. and we've been there in our business. Is I know that people have to look at me and say, is this working for you? And if it's not working for me, they'll never talk to me.
Yep.
And as I mentioned before, my brother and I, we had our own video production company, and we had to position ourselves. The problem wasn't that it's not that we weren't skilled. We were the top writers in the country, but we were just the world's best kept secret.
Yep.
We had all of this talent, but nobody could see us. And through studying marketing and coaching, we have this law, and it's called the law of visibility. If people can't see you, they don't know you exist. So we used video as a tool to get more eyes on us. And it was the best return on investment. We could spend 6 months back then putting a film together that positioned us in our ideal client's mind for 30 minutes with no interruption. And they just stared at the television for 30 minutes watching us. And we grew our first video, second, third, and fourth video. And then all of a sudden, we're all over the TV, all over the media. And it started with the video because people actually saw what we did and we could demonstrate. And that's the power of video.
It really is. I'm really big on video and content, and even photos as well. I make sure, you know, on my platforms online, I'm always just got something to post, something interesting, like trying to provide some insight of some sort that I think can help people, because it really is a great way of just letting people know what you're doing without directly saying, hey, come and get this, come and get this. You know, they can see the results and they can see what's going on. And then they think, oh, well, you know, maybe I'd like that.
Well, Aussies don't want to be sold to directly. Aussies love to buy. We've got heaps of money and we've got heaps of disposable income, but don't try to sell to me. But if you do it indirectly and you give them a great experience, which music and video does, and even just photos, they go, this is a great experience. When I'm ready to smoke that stuff Jay's smoking, I'll buy it from him.
Yep.
And so we've just got to do it very indirectly. And if you look at the marketing of Red Bull these days, it's very indirect.
Very.
Sponsoring events, dropping out of helicopters, shooting down chutes of snow, jumping off the side of cliffs.
Yep.
It's very subtle.
It is, and it's such a great way they've marketed too. Because as soon as I think of Red Bull, I think of all that really cool stuff they've done with the sponsoring of the events and like the wingsuits, and instantly takes you to that extreme place, which I guess is kind of where they wanted to position their drinks.
Well, there's a thing in the mind, and it's called a critical faculty, and it's like when you got Batman on your cup. We all know Batman's not true.
Yeah,
but it's a $1 billion movie industry, and they've had sequel after sequel and cartoons and toys. And what happens is when we go into the movie cinema to watch Batman, we know Batman doesn't exist, but we love stories. And in the first couple of minutes, our critical faculty starts to lower. And it's what separates us between reality and fiction. And it starts to drop down. And all of a sudden, you start to engage in the movie. And then what very successful companies do, they put their products inside a Batman movie. So all of a sudden you're right in the movie, and then somebody picks up the can of Red Bull or Coke, and all of a sudden it penetrates your mind, and it's in your mind, and you see yourself drinking this because the person that you're watching on the movie screen's doing it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And this is the critical faculty, and this is what happens if you do a great song, people get emotional. If you've got a great video clip and you're changing the perceptual positions, they feel like it's them in the video clip.
Yeah, like that kind of thing is so powerful, especially with music, because when I was going to school way back in the day, I'd have my iPod and I'd sit on the back of the bus.
Did
and
you
I'd
have your triangle?
Yeah, the triangle.
Your recorder?
I've actually got the saxophones down here. But I'd sit in the back of the bus and I'd just listen. And like hearing those songs that I used to listen to like many years ago, 15 years ago now, as soon as you hear them, it takes you straight back to that feeling and that emotion.
Yep. And this is buying desire. So what we know about sales is if you go into, let's say, Woolworths, and they're playing a song that you remember back in your teens, it takes you back there, and all of a sudden you start to buy more. And you're less price sensitive. And they do it all the time.
Brilliant. It's such great marketing. So that's great. So I think if someone's looking to start their own business, what's some of the best strategies they can use? Like say they want to put together a video. What's some of the best strategies they can use to kind of get that out and, tell everyone what's going on without going, hey, buy my stuff?
Well, the first thing is I believe you've got to have a lot of emotional intelligence. And the first part of emotional intelligence is understanding who you are. It's knowing yourself. And what you've got to do is you've got to come across as you on the video. That's the most important thing. I grew up in the era of Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl, and everybody wanted to be like them and they'd replicate their music, but it was just another Me Too product. Mm-hmm. So you have to get people seeing you in your best light. And you have to, things like your voice. If your voice is out of tune, go work on your voice.
Yep.
If your acting is not up to scratch, go work on your acting. So you have to know your strengths and weaknesses because once you get on video, all of that is highlighted.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get on the microphone, it's all highlighted. So start with emotional intelligence, understand who you are. The second thing is that you have to deal with a lot of criticism and rejection. My personal friend and voice coach, I've got a voice coach, his name's Bob Korf. He played Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar 1,000 times on Broadway. And what we know about Broadway musicals is the majority of them aren't successful. So what you have to realize is that part of success is a lot of failure. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to make multiple videos. Don't make one and think it's going to be an instant hit. You've got to make them over and over and over again until you figure out your style and figure out who is really watching you. And as we go back to Bob Korf, he just had his latest song put on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a Quentin Tarantino movie. But he recorded that song, Jay, 50 years ago.
50 years ago.
So we've got to deal with overnight successes taking a considerable amount of time. And the more that you want success, the more you'll hang in there.
Yeah, well, I guess it comes back to that pinch point, if you're forced and you've really got that thing in your mind that's pushing you. I just see it come up again and again, like with Eddie Hall is a really great powerlifter. He won the strongman for a couple of years, and his process was always the same. When he was going for a really big lift, like he thought of some really dark thoughts to the point where he had to do this lift, otherwise something terrible was going to happen. And that was one of the things that led him to lift 500 kilos in a deadlift, and he's the only person ever to do it. It's just amazing, like, how powerful the mind is.
It takes about 95% of your mental energy just to begin.
Mm.
And there's not a lot of competition out there, ladies and gentlemen. There's not a lot, because a lot of people never begin. I know from research, and we've done this for 20 years, is that the average person gives up on their goals before the very first attempt. They don't even try.
Yeah.
So this is where you've got to regulate your emotions. You've got to be very clear on what you want, and you have to be prepared for failure. You're going to fail more times than you succeed, but because you're all musos, you know that one good song can last a lifetime. It's like the Yellow Submarine. Where have you been for the last 50 years if you haven't heard that song?
Yeah.
And it can just be one song that changes your life, but you have to write many bad ones.
Yep.
Then we've got motivation, and motivation is the ability to get knocked down and get back up. You're going to have to put your video out there, and you will get criticism. More people will criticize you than compliments, and you've got to deal with that, but it's part of success. You think of any musical celebrity, they're always getting knocked down. But what you find is you find your fans through that, and they'll stand up for you. The other one is your comfort zone. Most people have a comfort zone, and they're so preoccupied about failure and fear of loss that they never begin. At the start, you are going to spend all of your money on videos. You're going to spend all of your money on equipment, and everything that you want to work won't work. But what you've got to do is you've got to keep making money. You've got to keep taking risks. And for self-made millionaires, Jay, most people go bankrupt or get close to bankruptcy 2.5 times before they become a self-made millionaire. And it takes them about 20 years. So your job is to keep making money, try something new. When it doesn't work, get the learnings, go again, and just keep going. And eventually you will find out the formula. Once you know your formula, you'll be fine, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, well, that's it. Nothing's ever a waste. You know, even if you do fail, you can always learn something from that. And whenever I've done like a day here, like casual teaching in high schools, that's what I tell the kids, because I find there's not much resilience, especially with the younger kids and even the high school kids. So I tell them it's fine to fail. If you fail, you learn. You know, every single time you fail, hopefully you've learned something, and then you can use that to turn that into a winner.
I was watching an interview the other day with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they're talking about these famous lines in the movies. Those famous lines in the movies were the ones that he thought were most boring.
Yep.
But they've changed and created cults. And so you don't know what your audience wants until it's out there, and then you got to get the feedback. So one of my good friends, Dr. Tad James, he said, there is no failure, there's only feedback. And your job is to quickly get the feedback and make improvements. And it's like baking a cake. Once you get the right ingredients, you can bake the perfect cake every time.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So how important do you think the online content has been? Like, if you had to compare that to other kinds of marketing that you've done, like, what's the return on video online compared to, say, elsewhere?
The return on video is lifetime. And I love video. My brother and I, we had a clothing company called Liquid Militia, and we started creating video content. Now, I was the Australian champion wakeboarder in 2006, and I still have people watching my video today. And what's going to happen is it's going to stay there on YouTube. It's going to stay on Facebook. It's going to go on Instagram, and more people are going to watch it. And more people are getting more joy today out of those videos than they were 10 and 15 years ago. So they last forever. So if you're investing in video, what happens is it's always there. And it's always current. And you know why? Because if it's the first time that person's seen it, it's the first time they've seen it.
Yep.
And so if they see it in 20 years' time, it's still the first time.
Yeah, it really is amazing, because even videos like, let's say, Guns N' Roses, for example, November Rain, you know, that was shot a long time ago, and, you know, time's gone on, technology's changed, but still on YouTube, it's had over 1 billion views.
It's the cheapest investment you'll ever make, but it'll come back with the highest return. I know with my videos is that people share my videos. I don't see people sharing advertisements on TV.
Yep.
Hey, check out this commercial. No, people don't do that. But this is shareable content. So if you create something, and what we say in my business is that you want to be marriage material. And with marriage material, what happens is when your partner, it's like my wife, it's our wedding anniversary today, 9 years.
Oh, congratulations.
My wife always looks her best. And so whenever I put a photo of my wife on my Facebook, I always get likes. So if you create great video content and I put it on my Facebook page and you watch it and you like it, you'll then share it on your Facebook page because it makes your Facebook page look great.
Yeah.
And then other people will put it on their website. So you've always got to think in terms of marriage material. Make great content, pay a premium for it, people will share it.
Yeah.
People don't like to share cheap stuff because if it sucks, which most of it does, is I'm not going to share it on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
It'll make me look bad.
Yeah, it'll make you look bad. That makes perfect sense. So I find a lot of folks with business that listen to the podcast, they really want to do their business, but they're not much of like a person that really wants to be outgoing. So what do you think you would suggest to those people? Like, how important is having a personal brand at the forefront of your business?
It's the most important thing. You're not a born musician. You're not a born guitarist. You're not a born pianist. All these things, all these skills are learnable. So when it comes to business, all you have to do is learn the skills of business. And the most important thing is to create your personal brand. People buy people. And then once they buy you, they will follow your recommendations. So you go out and you create a personal brand. And the first one is it's called the law of personality. You have to be unique. You can't be another me too. If you have a quirky sense of humor, let people see that. If you have a unique look, let people see that. And what you'll find is that these distinguishing features become part of your personality. You've also got to have a law of specialization. And the law of specialization says is that you must specialize in one key area.
Yep.
You can't be a jack of all trades. You can't be an average guitarist. You can't be an average pianist. You can't be an average vocalist because you'll never succeed. So you have to master one thing at a time. And it still takes about 10,000 hours to master something.
Yeah.
So put all of your energy into one area and specialize in that. Once you're specialized, then start to acquire other skills. So in business, learn how to position yourself. And my brother and I, we did this really good, Jay. We had a company and it was called Liquid Militia, had a great logo. And after we got it out there in front of enough people, I was known as Danny Danger. They called my brother Bad Boy Danny. And people would joke around. And my brother's not bad. He goes to church most of the time. And he'll have 2 beers and he'll be loose. So we mucked around with that one. But eventually people saw us, they liked us, and they said, well, what are you wearing? We said Liquid Militia, and they would want to wear the same. To the point that people started to get our logo tattooed on them. We saw it on their arms and on their legs, and it had its own personality. So through my brother and I and a team around the world, we got a lot of eyes on us. We specialised in wakeboarding. All we did was wakeboarding, and we owned that sector, and everybody in the sector started to become aware of us. And so you got to specialise.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because my transition, I've kind of gone from doing a lot of music, which I still do, to more video side. And whenever anyone would see you, it'd be like, oh, Jay, the guitar player. But now it's Jay, the video guy. So I think there's a lot of association like going on in people's minds between those two. So if you're doing a lot of different stuff, it's probably really difficult for them to really associate you with something and have that connection in their mind.
You've got to occupy that piece of real estate in their mind. And if you want them to think video and Jay, you have to tell them and you have to show them. It's like Muhammad Ali. He told everybody that he was the greatest before he was the greatest, but eventually everybody believed him and then he proved it and then they said he's the greatest.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because as soon as you said Muhammad Ali, instantly my brain just went the greatest.
I am the greatest. And so we're going to do that. But one of the challenges with Aussies, we're going to get past this tall poppy syndrome. And what happens is when we stake our claim in Australia, people are pretty quick to knock us down. People are pretty quick to give us a hard time. And this is where you need that emotional intelligence. So I started to tell people years ago that I'm Australia's #1 business coach, specialising in emotional intelligence. And what happens now is people introduce me. They say, here's Daniel Tolson. He's Australia's #1 business coach, specialising in emotional intelligence. And people say, wow, that's cool. And then they tell other people. And now it's become the reality. And I can back it up with the statistics. I can back it up with the testimonials. So for the people watching and listening, just choose a spot where you want to specialise in and claim it like Muhammad Ali. This is what successful people do. But most people say, oh, I want to fly under the radar and I don't want to get noticed. But you have to be noticed.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. I reckon that's something great that a lot of folks can take away with them. So, what's the best way to get in contact with you for those that are listening?
Best way to get in contact with me, go to my website, www.danieltolson.com, and there's a bunch of free resources on there. You can download my latest book, Win Sales Now, or you can also take my latest sales skills test, and you can measure how good you are at selling. It's kind of like a metronome. It tells you, are you up to speed with the market?
Yep, fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have a chat and hear some of your insights.
Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to the Blacklist Sessions. Stay tuned. We've got some very exciting guests coming up in the next few weeks, and I guess we'll see you later.